So a little background there for you is why we're doing this Windows stream.
Yeah, and if you've seen this blog post before, or if you have good eyes on the screen that I'm sharing right now, you can see that I was the sucker who updated it. No, I'm kidding. So my background, I was a customer for a long time, and as a customer and the environments that I worked in, I always used Windows. Right, I didn't have a choice. Windows
Yeah.
was the only option I had, and it was domain joined Windows at that. With all the
fun accoutrement.
all the appropriate security lockdowns and everything else, right? Administrator access is forbidden, right? It's all of those things. So, as Christian mentioned, this post was consistently in the top 5 after it was 2 or 3 years old, I think. About 2 years old, 3 years old. It came up of, hey, we should really update this. And I looked at it and took the approach of, well, I'm going to assume that most of you, even though you're Linux administrators, even though you're OpenShift administrators, are not Windows desktop administrators or not given permissions to be a Windows desktop administrator anyways. So as I was going through updating this, I tried to do it as much as possible, and I think I was successful entirely, without needing any sort of administrator privileges on your desktop for any of those steps.
Nice.
So yeah, that hopefully I was successful. I'm pretty sure I was because it worked on my desktop. Now, that being said,
it works,
and it's containers, so
yeah,
totally,
yeah, and, yeah. So that being said, for this particular live stream, I have commandeered my my middle child, my oldest daughter's desktop. So this is a Windows 10 desktop. It is not domain joined. But you should see, right, if I try to do something that requires admin privileges, it'll still come up. It'll still UAC. It'll still go through the normal prompts.
It'll freak out.
Stuff. Yeah. And the goal here is not that I want to literally go step by step through the blog post and show you what's happening here, but really just to explore what it's like to be an OpenShift administrator that is on a Windows desktop.
Yeah. Which I'm sure always, a lot of administrators find themselves,
Yeah. And as always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments. I will trust these guys to keep me honest and all of that. Chris threatened me with a backup Windows desktop in case something happens to this one. So we'll see what happens.
I got you.
I think it was first right threat here via Windows.
All right. So first things first. Microsoft, and I don't remember what version it was. At some point, Microsoft, switched the default console or the default terminal inside of Windows to PowerShell.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who has known me for any length of time, I'm a PowerShell person. I used PowerShell for many, many years. I was at one point many years ago, I like to think I was savvy with PowerShell, particularly when it came to doing things like administering VMware environments, doing things like that. So what you'll notice...
Didn't you RTFM?
I don't know.
He actually...
Didn't you write a book about
he actually...
PowerShell?
So Andrew's a little timid, but or a little humble. He actually wrote the book on PowerShell. Actually, he wrote a book talking about interfacing PowerShell with vSphere.
Book.
So he wrote a book, not the book. He wrote a book.
I mean, it could be the book.
I was a co-author, but still. Yeah.
Well, anytime I have a PowerShell question, you're like the first person I ping, so you're now, I guess, in the land of the blind. I don't know. Yeah, virtualization. That's another one, definitely.
Well, thank you, and I will try and wash those bus tire tracks off my back. So, yeah, yes, very true. I was a co-author of one of the Power CLI reference books. I don't remember which one now. It's behind me somewhere. Or I guess it's on this side. So I'm a PowerShell person. I've used it for many years. Microsoft switched the default over to PowerShell some time ago. So on this particular desktop, I'm running PowerShell 7, and I'm running it inside the new Windows terminal. Which
the fancy new one that you got on the Windows Store? Yeah, nice.
Which I have to say, I really like this terminal. It's super fancy. It's super nice.
I haven't tried it yet, so I'm curious to get your feedback.
I have no complaints about it whatsoever.
Dang.
You can see I can do things like open an Azure Cloud Shell directly from inside of here if I choose to.
That's wow.
So
that's
awesome.
awesome.
You can go back to the.
You can go back to the old way,
right?
Yeah, this is the new hotness that they released. Like Scott
Nice.
Hanselman was talking about it months ago, kind of thing, as beta.
Yeah, and it does the dynamic resizing and all that other stuff. So very much like the Linux terminal, right? If you have something that wraps and then you widen the window, it'll unwrap it and all that other stuff. Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, yay! Okay, good.
So I have PowerShell 7. Just FYI, PowerShell 7 is shipped as a MSI, or you can install it from the store. Currently, the default version of PowerShell is still 5 dot something. Do note that PowerShell 6, PowerShell 7 do work in Linux as well. So if you happen to be a PowerShell person, PowerShell fan, you can use PowerShell from inside of Linux, inside of a container even.
I think I can brew install PowerShell too. I'm not sure. I forget.
Yes.
Yeah,
you absolutely can.
Yeah.
So I also have my internal cluster here that I need to find the link to.
Very secure with your DuckDuckGo, I see. So this is literally your
using Brave, using DuckDuckGo, like
DuckDuckGo.
You wow, yeah.
You see, it doesn't even let you go to the console. So secure.
I know. Well,
notice
it's a lab.lan URL, so it says, I don't know what this is. I'm going to search instead.
Of course.
So this is my internal cluster that I use for all of my demos and stuff like that. Anybody who's seen me demo anything before has probably seen this cluster. So I'm using this because this will be our example cluster. This will be the one that I'm connecting to and doing actions against throughout. And then the last thing that I need is to go to cloud.redhat.com because I need access to all of our different resources.
And you can get one of these accounts for free by heading over there. It says create one now right underneath this block. You just went to cloud.redhat.com. And you can get off and running just like Andrew is.
So there was an interesting, so I am a Linux admin, always use Linux for everything, even my desktop. So someone in the chat mentioned something called Cobra. I don't know if you know what that is, Andrew. If you could expand on that.
Is that a Windows thing? Or?
Well, apparently it's a...
Paris
it would be nice if Cobra full support PowerShell completion.
Which Cobra?
I don't know.
There's a lot of things called Cobra.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's what is like Cobra, like the
language
G.I. Joe guys.
Not that.
No, not that guy. It looks like it might be the language. Cobra You're talking about PowerShell and Cobra.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that is one thing that I did I did a little bit of background research.
So I know who SPF 13 is.
Before this, around whether or not there are PowerShell modules for Kubernetes, et cetera. So, can you get the native PowerShell experience interacting with Kubernetes? And I wasn't able to find anything official. There was a couple of very unofficial, very kind of not complete looking things out there that I didn't want to subject myself nor the world to. Although I'm sure that they would be perfectly functional. So when we look at, even though I'm in the PowerShell terminal here and everything else, when we're looking at the OpenShift command line tools, whether they're OpenShift or Kubernetes command line tools, they are going to be kind of the native compiled, right? They're written in Go, et cetera. So unfortunately, what that means is I can't pipeline if I'm talking, if I'm using PowerShell, I can't pipeline as easily as I would want to. I would have to wrap it. I would have to do like string extraction and all kinds of other stuff like you would in Bash. So not as fun as I would like. I would love to be able to have objects, PowerShell objects for each one of those Kubernetes things, Kubernetes objects. And being able to pipeline those around would be just phenomenal, but it's not there, at least not that I could find. If anybody knows differently, I would be very, very interested.
Yeah. And I'll happily share it out,
Yeah. So all I've done here, I went to cloud.redhat.com. I went to the OpenShift page. I clicked on install. I selected a random infrastructure. And really what I'm looking for here is this link, this download command line tools. And I am using Windows, but really what I want is the link address. And the reason I want that is because this is actually a directory that we can browse. Right, so I can come in here and I can look and I can see all of the different tools that are inside of here. Being Windows, of course, I'm going to want to download the Windows zip, which I will go ahead and kick that off now. Yes, go ahead and save. But I can also go up a directory and I can see all kinds of different, all the various releases, all the other stuff that's going on inside of here. I'm not terribly interested in that at the moment. But rather what we want is all of the other tools. So this is my secret method of finding the quick and easy way to all of our command line tools, all of our other stuff. So you see each one of these projects has a top level directory in here. So for example, if I want ODO, I select the ODO directory, latest, and then we see we have access to all of our downloads. You can, of course, so the official way of finding all of these things is to go to the docs, or at least the official way I use when I use the official way. Go to the docs here, and if we scroll all the way down to, pick whatever one of these I want, so CLI tools, and then ODO, I can go to installing ODO, and you see here it has links to each one of these that I want to do. So if I scroll down to Windows, it says download the latest file, and it has a link over to that file. So one thing to note here is that the documentation takes a very safe route of, you see they're saying create a folder at, C, at the root level of your C drive of go bin. Again, not everybody has permissions there. In addition to which, it's not going to be in your path. So they very generically just say, add the path variable to your, or the variable into your path. And, they don't always provide thorough directions. Additionally, I wanted to try and be conscious of things like roaming profiles. So if you want to put it into your, your documents directory or something like that, so that it's a part of your roaming profile, you can. I would not recommend doing that with code ready containers, however, because it's like 2 gigabytes in size and your admin team will hate you. But otherwise, yeah, there's nothing wrong with putting them in there. I think the directions that I have in the blog post put it outside. It's still in your profile, so that if your admin team has something that goes through and periodically cleans up user profiles, it'll still get wiped that way, but it is not part of the roaming profile. Okay, all of that stage set. I'll get to these other tools here in just a moment. But the core of what I want to do here is quite simply unzip our file. And 7-zip extract here.
7-zip. Did you remember to pay for it? Which one was the one the one that like you're supposed to pay for it, but like if you didn't, it still worked?
You never had to pay for WinZip, I think it was.
I don't remember.
No, I'm talking about like Windows, like 90, like 95.
That's what I mean, right? Like WinZip, the actual.
Was it WinZip? Oh, I think
yeah.
Okay, I think it was.
Like it always gave you a prompt. Hey, you could pay us.
Yeah, exactly.
You're past your expiration. You're past your 14-day trial or whatever, but you could continue to use it no matter what.
Yeah.
I see somebody asking about increasing the browser font size, so I'm doing that now.
Please, and sorry, I didn't call you out on that.
Hopefully it
WinRAR.
will carry across. WinRAR, yeah.
WinRAR is the one I was thinking about. Okay.
Yeah, did the same
so
thing.
I've used 7-zip for years. I actually, when I install a new Windows desktop, I use a tool called Ninite. So it's a pretty simple thing. You go through, you select all the things that you want to install, put a checkbox for each one, click the download, it'll give you an executable, and hit it, and it downloads and installs everything for you.
Look at all those wares.
And you can
you
can continually use the same executable, and it'll just go through and update each one of the tools.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Never heard
Dang.
that.
Okay. So like
you're getting hacker news here from Andrew.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am bookmarking that for sure. because for the longest time it did not have a Windows box. But then suddenly I started live streaming and I needed a Windows box for certain things. And for the first time in ages, I have a Windows box at my house. So yeah, this would be very helpful.
So you can see I downloaded OC. It's in the downloads directory. I extracted it into its own directory here. And I can, of course, CD into this directory, and I can do the standard / OC. And it will give me all of the options, all of the things that I need, right? I can do a, follow the standards. Oops, Control U doesn't work in Windows. I always forget that. So all of the things that I need, I can come here, log in again. And if we take this guy, another thing that works well with this client is copy and paste. Works as expected. So you see, I can't just copy and paste, right? I need to do the ./oc.exe. And yes, insecure. So now I can use the, again, ./oc, get node. So it's kind of obnoxious constantly having to provide either an absolute or a relative, can't talk today, path in order to access all of my resources. So instead, what we want to do is put it somewhere inside of my folder, inside of my particular set of documents. So if we look at our user directory, there is a hidden object or a hidden folder for app data. So if you didn't know, this is where Windows keeps all kinds of user information relating to all of your different, applications, programs, etc. You can see that we have this local, low, and roaming. Roaming, of course, being a roaming profile. This is the folder that would be replicated around with roaming desktops or roaming profiles in Active Directory, whereas local is not. So quite simply, I'm going to create a new folder inside of here. So Control-Shift-N is the shortcut for that. I'm going to do Red Hat. No space, because I see that most of these others don't have spaces. There's one or two, but even though it makes me twinge a little bit not having the space in Red Hat. And then from there, all I want to do is copy my downloaded file in there. If we go here and simply drag it across. So first of all, we can see inside of here, it's gone from there. I can also go back to my home directory, and now I can do oc.exe. Oh, it's not in my my environment. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So now that it is in a common location,
skip the step.
I did. Now that it is in a common location, I want to add it to my environment. So there's a couple of different ways of doing that. And if we look at our blog post, I documented 3 of the most common ones. So the first one is adding it quite simply to this PowerShell session. So all I'm doing here, so $env accesses our environment variables, :path is the specific one that I want. I'm going to append to that variable, semicolon, local app data, Red Hat, OpenShift. So you can see I did not use the same path. So I can also do quite simply things like env path to see the current path. You can see that there's a bunch of things inside of there. I can also do local app data and see which particular folder that is referring to. If you do, just go ahead.
Like, does $env give you the same kind of output like env on a Linux desktop would? No. Okay. Never mind. I was hopeful.
There is a way to enumerate those. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Is it like :* maybe? I don't know.
I forget. Someone in chat will probably pop up with it.
Yeah, so the PowerShell ISE will give you a whole list of them. It reads into those, and it'll help you do the predictive selecting. I don't remember the command off the top of my head to enumerate them.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. My bad.
No, you're good. So all I'm going to do here is copy my path here into my or append the path that I just added that file to. So local app data Red Hat. and append it to my path. So for this PowerShell session right here, I can now do oc.exe, and you can see it gives me all of the things that I have. So still retains my session and everything. But if I create a new session, and we can do our standards, blow it up, right? oc.exe, and it's going to say, nope, not there. So that's fine, right? You can work around that and have basically that command executed every time by adding it to the PowerShell profile. So if you're not familiar with the PowerShell profile, this is kind of like a bash RC, right? Or a ZSHRC or whatever that happens to be. It is a file that is, okay. Yep, it is executed. It's sourced every time you open a new PowerShell session. So you can see all I'm doing in this particular command is saying, add what I just executed up here as, to the end of that file. So that every time a new PowerShell session is started, it's there. So that's good and bad. So one, it's good because, well, if I'm banging away on the command line, great. It's bad because if I have a script that is being executed automatically, so I've got a scheduled task or something like that, it's not going to pull that in, right? It's only executed when I open a PowerShell session. So if I have, like PowerShell.exe, this.ps1, that doesn't get read. So the way around that, or the most robust way of doing it, is to actually add it to your environment variable. So I documented here how to do it programmatically. If you don't want to do it programmatically, I understand blindly executing other people's code. The way to do it is a little bit hokey, and it always takes me a while to remember in Windows 10. You would think I would remember this after doing it a bunch of times, but no.
Yes, I mean, it's like curl bash, right? Like we tell everyone not to do it, but I end up doing it anyway.
You're not supposed to admit that, Christian.
Yeah, you're supposed to keep that to yourself.
I never do
it. So you saw what I did there. So all I did here was I right-clicked on the start menu, went to System. It pops up this settings menu, and then I went to System Info, which pops up this particular one. And then this says Advanced System Settings. It has the little UAC icon next to it. It won't actually UAC unless you do certain actions in here. So if I go to this Advanced tab, so this is where I could, for example, change the name of my computer, right? If I want to do things like disable the system restore points, etc. This is how I turned on remote desktop. Anyways, so we have this environment variables. You can see by clicking that, I can edit my users variables as well as system level variables. So remember, system variables will apply to every user across the entire system. User variables are only my user. So I can go in here, I can hit edit and add a new path. And I will use the same path that I use over here. I'll copy that guy.
Copy what? You're going to copy what?
I'm going to copy that guy. Copy that string.
There you
go. So one thing to note here, this won't actually work as I've copied it because this is a PowerShell environment variable, and you can see it's using the old command style. You can simply substitute that with % local app data %.
Oh, cool.
And we can validate that is correct by copying it. We'll hit OK first. And if I do a run and just paste that in there, it'll open up that particular folder. You could also, from a command prompt, so if I open old school commands, and again, we'll make it bigger so everybody can read it.
Old school.
And if we do an echo on that, it'll echo out to that particular variable. So
cool.
And I keep trying to hit the Mac OS super up so I can see all of the windows tiled up, and that doesn't work very well.
Across remote desktop? No.
Yeah. So I've added into my path, I've added my particular environment variable. So I hit OK a couple of times here, and we'll exit out of all these two sessions and open up a new one. And now, assuming everything went according to plan, we should have and it didn't. So let's see.
I love it when it breaks. Everything goes according to plan.
What happens?
Is this the new session?
Did you have to log out and log back in?
I don't think I have to log out and log back in.
Or maybe close the window? I don't know.
I bet it's having to close the window. I bet you're right, if I remember this correctly.
And I always thought PowerShell was blue.
That's the other one.
Oh, the other one?
The other one.
So if I just bring up this PowerShell.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. That's the one I'm used to seeing. Oh, okay. So, this is the new Windows window thingy. Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. So if we look at this is also PowerShell version 5.1 as opposed to 7.03. And then this is the Windows terminal. So I can still, just to round it out here, I can still open up in this. This is kind of the same. So, but yeah, nice. It did change from blue to black.
Cool.
I guess black is cooler or something. Not as cool as red, but it's something.
It's something.
All right, there we go. So very much to your point, and thank you for the reminder, Christian, of I did need to actually close out of the window, which is the Microsoft terminal window. Had I been using the other, like had I tried with either of the ones that I just brought up, it would have worked as expected. So Microsoft's terminal, this new fancy thing, was what was preventing that from working. So at this point, I can do my oc.exe, and I can also do tab completion.
Do you need the exe?
Yes. Okay. At least I think so. Let's check. Oh, no, I don't. Now that it's in the path.
Oh, cool. Nice.
It's even better.
Yeah. It's even more native.
We'll come back over here. And now if I just paste my OC login commands, it just works.
Now you're OpenShifting with Windows.
So now I have that same OC experience across both. It's not bash, which means that you don't have the same text manipulation, right? I would still need to pipe into like and unfortunately, even though this is PowerShell, things like where don't work. Remember, each one of these isn't a object, it's one string. So grepping and stuff like that to find an individual line, you're still in Windows. There's probably a workaround for that. If I had to guess, there's got to be like a Windows equivalent of grep.
Yeah.
But I don't know off the top of my head.
Got me.
So
this is where you have to learn the JSON path really well. if you want to grab individual components.
Yeah, I wish, I could pipeline into like, where dash object, like, underscore dot name equals.
Now, Andrew is.
But it doesn't. It doesn't work because there is no properties associated with each one of those. Right.
Got it.
So inside of PowerShell, so where.object is basically a select, right? And then inside of the loop, $_ is referring to the current object, the current iteration. And then this would be a property on that particular object. So going back to the conversation before of if we had native PowerShell, object extensions for Kubernetes, then this would absolutely be phenomenal and we could interact with it in that way. But instead, this output is treated as a single string. I see somebody saying fine string is the Windows grep. So after this, now that we kind of have these preliminaries set up, which is really more or less creating the folder over here, and then adding that in variable to the path, at this point, it's more or less just going through and downloading all the different tools.
Yeah, so now you can just basically pop in ODO, you can pop in kubectl, you can pop in pretty much
Exactly.
any tool set, right? So it's like a one-time setting.
Exactly. So from here, right, I'm going to go into my folder here that I downloaded or that I put this in before. And Red Hat, and I could just save this inside of here. So one thing I will do is, as it downloads, I'm going to rename it to just ODO instead of all of those other extensions. You can see it downloaded for
I can
me.
tell this is your kid's laptop because I see Fortnite folder.
Yeah. Yeah. There's ODO. Yeah. There's Fortnite. There's Star Stable. There's Roblox. There's all kinds of stuff.
I just want all the old games to work on my new hardware.
Use DOSBox.
Oh, okay. That's true.
So there's ODO. So here, let's go and grab, Helm. We can do the same thing here. Yeah. So unfortunately, the only Windows tool that doesn't work, or the only tool that doesn't work in Windows, is OpenShift install. I wish I had an answer for that. I wish I had a way to get OpenShift install to work on Windows, to kind of complete all of those requirements, all the things that are needed. But unfortunately, I don't.
Well, okay.
So yeah, it is.
But I mean, everything
Mac
else.
OS. Yeah, it is Mac OS or Linux only. But yeah, everything else works as expected. Going back to what I was saying before about code ready containers, just be aware that you see this is a 2.2 gigabyte compressed file. So if you stick that into your roaming profile, your admins will probably be upset with you, as well as your login times will take forever.
Yeah. Someone mentioned we need a chocolatey package for ODO. That's probably...
So I saw some conversation about chocolatey recently, and the last I saw was we weren't sure who was creating and maintaining the chocolatey package. So I don't know if that was created by a third party or if it was created by a Red Hatter who has since forgotten about it. But we should probably figure that out.
We should probably loop back in on that.
A great mystery.
Well, also, I think it's the same with brew, right? Like if you brew install like OpenShift clients, the brew install installs OpenShift, the OC client version 4.1. So that means whoever originally created it isn't maintaining it. because we're on 4.5, soon to be 4.6.
4.6, yeah.
Yeah, I think 4.1 is deprecated, so it's even,
it is.
So it's even
had Mike on Monday to remind folks.
So yeah, unfortunately, and you can see Windows directory only oc.zip. If I go to Linux, this is because I'm in clients. If I go up a couple of directories here, and I go to dependencies,
go up a couple directories, the most wondery directories.
Actually, now I've confused myself. I don't know where I'm going.
You're looking for not.
What are you? You're not looking for Fortnite.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm not looking for OC. I'm looking for OCP. And now we have our OpenShift install. You can see we just have OpenShift install and OpenShift client. There is no install for Windows.
Cool.
So as I was pointing out before, if we switch over to our Red Hat directory here, I will quickly extract this guy twice because it's a tar file and I wasn't paying attention.
They say, can you not have ODO as a Python library?
ODO I thought was Go.
Yeah. I don't think it's a. I don't think you can do like pip install ODO.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think so.
There, I cheated and I just opened the
cheater, pumpkin eater.
Opened it instead of trying to do it the other way.
And I always do a pip install for globally too. I want to talk about bad habits.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm
the only one that's going to use this box.
So
exactly.
I mean, let's face it.
The other one that we want to grab is kubectl, or kube control, or however you want to pronounce.
However you prefer to say it today.
Yeah, this is how do I feel like today. Today I feel
Qbextel, I've heard.
Qbextel,
QBXtel,
QBCTL, yeah.
QBCTL, yeah.
QBE, someone spelled the whole thing. QBECTL.
So one thing to note, I don't think that it is included in this. Yeah, this just includes OC. So we're expecting folks to go to Kubernetes to download
kubectl. I think I always just Google for it. kubectl Windows download, yeah.
So super complex. Let me actually use the menu here and not just randomly browse.
Well, I mean, I like watching you browse the internet.
Right? Yeah. That was what you were doing on Tuesday. So
yeah. And you can see there's a bunch of different ones here. Anyways, It's kubectl. It works exactly as expected inside of all of these. The goal here was to show that it's straightforward. It's easy to get all of these tools set up on your Windows desktop without being an administrator, and have that same administrator experience, with the exception of installation, which does unfortunately require a Linux desktop, although you should be able to use the now I forgot what it's called. What's the Linux thing in Windows?
WSL.
WSL. Yeah, that was going to be my question.
I forget what Windows subsystem for Linux.
Linux. Yeah. And then they have WSL2 now. So I was wondering what the when you use one for the other, but I guess you would use this method when you don't have an admin, right?
Yeah. So to my knowledge, interacting with folks, talking with customers, there's not a lot of enterprises that are allowing WSL. It just doesn't have the same controls. It doesn't have the same ability to, lock down that WSL environment the same way that you can the rest of Windows. So it's not common, but you could use that.
You can't control it with group policy or something like that. Which
apparently
is probably
not,
why.
I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
So you can
path manipulation on Windows. I've faced many problems with that before, I think is what this says. Yeah.
And you can have if you are an administrator, or if you have a separate group policy or user policy for an administrator team, etc., you can always push out all of these tools. You can update their path automatically, all using group policy.
I mean, these are tools we provide. Red Hat provides these tools for you to use on Windows machines. So you can totally add this to your group install for OpenShift admins or container admins, whatever you want to call them.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So if I'm just at home, sitting at home, I would probably use WSL or WSL2. On an enterprise, though, I may not have that flexibility of just installing a Linux VM, right?
Yeah, you might end up using Hyper-V or a VMware, box, maybe something like that potentially.
So honestly, and this is something I would be curious about from the audience, which is most of the enterprises I have either worked for or worked with, the data center is strongly isolated from the rest of the environment. So oftentimes it requires you're already either VPNing or otherwise connecting securely into that environment, or there is no direct connection without a lot of bureaucracy around firewall exceptions, etc. So many times you end up with a Bastion host regardless. And using that as a Linux-based Bastion host to run OpenShift install, to run the rest of the commands from. For administrative purposes. From a developer perspective, from a user perspective, I think the OC command running from Windows, port 443 access or 6443 accessing the API, pretty straightforward from an exception standpoint.
Yeah, it's because I've worked with customers who've had things pretty isolated, and
I've worked.
You're right, Andrew.
Financial services,
exactly. Financial
a Bastion box that I'm always jumping through somehow,
or Citrix, right? They'll open up a Citrix session that connects them to a client that then connects them to the production environment or the development environment.
And then there's the other side where it's a completely disconnected environment where you could go into a whole nother area to interface with it. Even then, there's still Bastion host to some extent, right?
So yeah, I see Paris mentioning DSC, right? There's also PS remoting and all of that other fun stuff. Again, a lot of that varies based off of the security team, the Windows team, and whether or not they're accessible. But it's also an option to do that whole hopping around through the data center or into secure enclaves.
Does anyone happen to have an answer for Vinay Vanu here? While I'm using S2I for a Java source code and Git with OpenShift, I'm getting this error, binsh user libexec S2I assemble not found.
That's
Here's where
error.
you're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, because that
should be
because that should be built into the S2I image
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, because the assemble is actually part of the S2I process.
So what is the source image? I'm guessing might be the issue here.
Yeah, the source image, the image you're using for S2I.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, there's something wrong with it, or
something not configured right with it to get.
Yeah, because assemble, I think, is the second step in S2I. There's like 3 or 4 steps S2I, and like assemble is like very early on in the process. So
yeah,
I'm just a simple fake Windows administrator.
I don't. No, I mean, I know this probably isn't Windows related, but I'm not a S2I expert either. I feel like I could drop that to Jason Dobies though real quick and see if he can give me an answer.
Another guy who has another book.
Yes, which I have actually. Yeah, although he's offline. But
so you have Dobies' book, but not Andrew's book.
Andrew's book's 6 years old.
Oh, okay.
Someone sent me Dobies' book, by the way.
Oh, okay,
I didn't
gotcha.
like I asked for it and it was sent to me. Gotcha. Andrew, could someone send me your book?
Yeah, there you go. Do you have a box of books somewhere?
You have a box of books?
I want it autographed as well.
I gave away all the ones I had.
2 or 3
that
boxes
makes sense when it was published, but they were all given away.
Yeah, no. So I have an autographed copy by every author of the DevOps Handbook, I think. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I would love to have an autographed copy of an Andrew Sullivan book someday. And Christian Hernandez.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, one day I'll write a book.
Yeah, we all will one day.
One day. So question, there's no question in chat, but like something just popped into my head about using an IDE. Does this either work with, like, let's say Visual Studio, or does it work with or does it circumvent any of that, or I don't know how Windows developers, or because we've been kind of focusing on the admin aspect of it, so I don't know how this would work.
So I'll bring up the ISE, even though it's deprecated. It's there by default on this Windows, but so the modern method is using VS Code and the execution extension to bring your PowerShell session into VS Code. Basically, PowerShell ISE was the first version of that, or the first iteration of that.
Gotcha. Okay, so it does. So you can bring in your PowerShell into because I'm a Vim guy, so I'm kind of
right. Yeah.
So it works just as you would expect, right? You can see I can paste my code in here and hit the execute button, and it logs in and then prints out my results. And you can do all the same modification, all the same inside of there. Note that this is, because it's old, it's PowerShell, PowerShell version table. This is PowerShell version 5.1. So you see, I was using PowerShell 7.03 and this other big one back here. And this is PowerShell version 5, and it works equally well with both of them.
Nice. Let's see. When you create a service account, is that account related to the account in the container, or is it just used to give service access permission to the container? So service accounts are for providing gated access to the service itself. And that service could be a container or a series of containers, right?
Yeah, so a service account, when you deploy an application on OpenShift, it uses the default service account, right? So there's a few default ones. There's one called default, which is the one that it uses at run, right? The service account that it uses to run the actual container. There's the deployer service account that basically is just the service account that is responsible for deploying your application. And I believe there's the build service account that is responsible to, if you're using S2I, or we're just talking about S2I, to build your application, right? So when you create a service account, it's actually nothing happens other than the service account gets created. If you want your application to run as that service account, you actually need to specify that in your either deployment configuration, your daemon set configuration, what have you. So it just depends, right? So if you're gonna give special permissions, usually when you create a service account, you're giving special permissions, or you're either restricting or widening the default permissions of the default service account. So
right,
depending on what you're using it for, right? So like if I am, if I'm creating an application that needs to do some admin work, I may have to widen the permissions. I don't want to touch the default one, right? Because that's like a global one. I create a specific service account and attach it to a specific application.
Right.
So it uses that service account.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
I remembered to look at my sticky note that had the things I wanted to cover.
Good for you.
So I've been, I know, with only 11 minutes to spare. I've been logging in just using an OC login. If you want to use the kube config, you can absolutely do that. And you can do
totally.
it just like you would expect inside of any of the others. So all I've done here, I connected to my Bastion host. So this was the one that was used to provision the cluster. I'm looking at the kube config here. So if I were to do a cat on that, oops, if I could type correctly, I'll get there eventually. Right, I can basically copy this file out. I don't have SCP on this or WinSCP on this particular host, but I can copy that out and I can provide it into a number of different places. So if I do OC help and I do, OC options, there is this, it'll tell me where the default kube control or kube cuddle or whatever you want to call it. Oh, yep.
There's a kube config, right? Option kube config.
So more or less, the default location is my home directory, C users Andrew.kube, and I can put that, even though this says HTTP cache, I can put the kube config file in there as well, and it will automatically ingest that and automatically use it. So similarly to on Linux, you can put that anywhere you want. So if you wanted to put it in your roaming profile, for example, so that you have those files everywhere you go,
right.
You can do that. And then you can put an environment variable that's, kube config equals and the path to that particular file. So just like Linux, you can direct it over to anywhere that you want it to go. And then you can do that, passwordless login using the kube config file. Also helpful for, remember, if you're using that kube config file, you're connecting as the system admin. So one of the useful ways of connecting when you might have accidentally locked yourself out of the cluster or removed administrator access in other ways.
Yeah. So like, or if your OAuth is failing, so like the OAuth,
like
the OAuth runs as a pod, right? So there's I guess collection of pods. If that is down, you may have to log in using this what we call a certificate method, right? So this authentication, I don't want to say bypasses OAuth, but it uses a different authentication method, not connected to OAuth. So if your OAuth is having problems, this is how you would connect.
You have a failure domain that involves your OAuth.
Yes.
So, and note, as y'all were talking there, OC debug, like connecting to the nodes, all that other stuff still works exactly as expected.
Beautiful.
So
that's awesome.
I can still connect in just like I need to. You saw me SSH into a host. I didn't install SSH, by the way. SSH comes with
the new terminal.
Yeah.
Nice. Like, is it OpenSSH or
I have no
fork
idea.
Or something? Okay, we don't know. Okay, but it works. It's compliant. Seems to have all the flags that you need. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Putty is on this host, but you saw I didn't use it. I just used SSH.
Okay. Cool. That's awesome, man.
So
the putty guys must be crossed that it's now included. SSH is now included in the.
Well, it's about time. I mean, it's been an open standard forever. So, like, come on, right? Like,
hey, I'm happy just to have 1, tabs, and 2, a resizable interface that behaves appropriately.
Right. All right. Yeah. Line wrapping. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Again, you can see, look, it wrapped the way it's supposed to. And as I expand it out here, it fixes itself as it's supposed to. So
very nice.
Microsoft is doing a lot of really interesting things, both in the open source world and with Linux as a whole.
Yeah.
So I am excited and interested. You all know I've talked about amongst our team before of I could feasibly use Windows as my full-time desktop.
Yeah. And I have a Microsoft Linux tux here.
Yeah, the Microsoft booth was giving those back when we had conferences.
Yeah, back when we had conferences, there were Microsoft tuxes to be had. Yeah. No, Microsoft has done a lot to get Linux working on Azure, to get Azure working, better with Linux, and has done an enormous amount of work in the open source world, as well as working with us on getting OpenShift running in Azure. So yeah, like we're super happy to be working with them now, like as equal partners. It's great.
Yep. Now we just need to figure out how to get a, this Azure Cloud Shell. I just need an OpenShift Cloud Shell prompt inside.
Ooh. Yeah, see, that'd be cool.
That would be cool.
To get a Cloud Shell in there, yeah, that'd be really cool.
Where do I put that request in?
when you're bored this weekend, Christian, that's a
project for this weekend.
There you go. Yeah, you don't have anything else to do. All right. Anything else? No more questions. It doesn't look like. I don't think. Just double checking.
Yeah. Last call for questions.
Last call.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
I mean, like you can watch. you can watch something else. Actually, you know what? Let's do a raid. You want to do a raid, guys?
You can raid. You can raid.
Let's raid the IBM
folks. Guys. The IBM guys doing something.
Let's see what they're up to. Hang on. Let me get the interface here. Okay, so we've never done this before, but we're going to raid a channel, and that channel is going to be, if they're still online, IBM developer. They're not online.
They're not online.
Ah, shoot. Okay, so I'll take requests, but it looks like we might have gotten another channel here. Has anyone another question? Has anyone faced any challenges when adding a machine to your machine nodes, and have they experimented with machine autoscalers? I believe, Christian, you have plenty of experience there, don't you?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand the question.
Is it machine config, like you're trying to scale vertically?
Yeah, so there's the machines, right, or the machine sets that actually, as Andrew explained it pretty well on Tuesday, how to scale your clusters. So if I wanted to scale my cluster, I just add another machine. And then I scale the machine set, which then adds a machine, which then adds a node. And then there's the machine config operator, which is used to manage the actual node. Andrew kind of went through that a little bit on Tuesday. So if you guys haven't checked out Andrew's operations or admin hour, OpenShift admin hour.
I just happen to have an AWS cluster up that I'll be using for another demo this afternoon.
There you go.
So we can talk about it a little bit. So the principle is, so machines are the representation from OpenShift Kubernetes to the underlying infrastructure as a service. So this represents represents the in this instance, AWS virtual machine and how to interact with it. Whereas nodes represent that machine into OpenShift, into Kubernetes itself.
Right.
So one of these is, hey, you are a member of my Kubernetes cluster, right? You're a node in my Kubernetes cluster. I need to schedule workload to you. One of these is, hey, you are a component of my cluster. I need to add or remove, as the case may be.
Right.
So there's 2 aspects to scaling machines, or 3 aspects. So one, you need to be using an IPI deployment, right? Something with a cloud provider integration so that it understands how to talk to that underlying infrastructure. and do things like request new or destroy existing VMs.
Right.
So the second thing is you need a machine autoscaler. And I don't
also, I think it's worth noting that means that you're using DHCP. We should call that out.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. Could you say that one more time?
You need DHCP if you're going to do machine auto scaling. There we go.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
It's an inside joke amongst us because we get asked all the time if I can do IPI with static IP assignment 10. No,
I just want that out in the universe as much as possible.
So the first thing I need is a machine autoscaler, and I define a machine autoscaler for each one of the machine sets in my deployment. So I haven't pre-staged any of this, so I'm not going to do this because I'm pretty sure it'll fail. But essentially, you would want to create a machine autoscaler for each one of these machine sets. And these machine autoscalers you see represent the minimum and maximum number of machines from that machine set that it will manage. So if you wanted it to scale all the way to 0, right, put a 0 here. If you want it to scale to 100, put a 100 here. So the third thing that you need is a cluster autoscaler. And I'm going to completely forget where the cluster autoscaler is at.
It is underneath administration, I believe.
That's what I thought. Cluster settings. Oh, I don't remember where it's at.
Dagnabbit.
Cluster autoscaler. We'll go the old school way.
There you go.
Yeah, go with the CRD.
Yeah.
List all CRDs.
So a cluster autoscaler defines the size of the cluster as a whole. So if we look at our cluster right now, right, we have 6 machines or 3 worker machines inside of here. So you would say, I want my cluster to be between maybe 1 and 50 nodes. And what will happen is when a pod is unable to schedule due to an out of resource condition, it will say, okay, I need to scale up. And it will select one of the machine sets that has an available capacity to scale as defined by the machine autoscaler and increase it. And that will result in machine API talking to the underlying infrastructure saying, hey, provision me a new VM, right? It boots up, it goes through the normal node joining process, etc. So where can that go wrong? A couple of different places. So one, if you don't have kind of all 3 of those things configured, in particular, both a machine autoscaler and a machine or a cluster autoscaler, then it won't trigger
DHCP.
Yes, and DHCP. So it won't trigger that. Won't trigger that to happen. 2, you need to make sure that you have a machine set or an autoscaler definition that has additional capacity, right? If they're all maxed out, then it says I can't increase the machines anymore. Sorry. So 2, it could have issues communicating with the underlying infrastructure. Oftentimes we see this internally. Like my AWS account is linked to our engineering team. Our engineering team, as you would expect, is doing lots and lots and lots and lots of builds, which means that often I get throttled. I'm a low important account. I get it. That makes sense. But it means that it can take, what would normally take, 3 to 5 minutes to provision a node can sometimes take 15 to 20 minutes because AWS is saying you're low priority. I'm throttling you until an appropriate time.
Right.
Also, quotas is another.
You will hit quotas.
Quotas with your underlying infrastructure as a service provider. If you change credentials, something like that, something happens to your credentials, your permission set changes, all of those, you can find those errors. If you go into as soon as I find what I'm looking for here, if you go into the machine API project, which it was conveniently pre-selected. And then if you look inside of these pods, there'll be errors inside of here about, why it can't talk to that underlying infrastructure.
Okay, so Vinay Kumar has responded about his source to image issue. He's trying to created a build config, Java source code and URL. Builder is Wildfly, image stream tag of Java 8. And step 9, and getting issue is frustrating me. I can understand why.
Yeah, I can understand why it's frustrating me reading it.
Not found subprocess. Exited status 127. Does Wildfly include S2I? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't. This is a Jason. This is one of the developers.
So tell you what,
definitely
email me cshort@redhat.com. I will get you an answer. Promise.
There you go.
And
direct
just do it like that.
Mouth.
Well, yeah, we'll go direct. Yeah. I'll get you an answer. That's the best I can do right now. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But
none of us are
answer.
Developers, unfortunately. None of us right now are developers. Right. Neither Chris nor me nor Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
but yeah. So thank you all for joining. I really appreciate the time, Andrew. Thank you for updating the blog post and doing the video for everybody, so people can come watch this later if they so need to. And yeah.
I have to go join a very important KubeCon booth meeting. So
that's
likewise.
Right. Oh,
yeah.
I'm on the same call, so I guess I'll see all three of you.
Yeah, I'll see you in about 30 seconds.
30 seconds. That's right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you tomorrow.